Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred On podcast. Happy New Year, my first video / podcast from 2024. Welcome back to the show. Big news actually, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can now become a Spurred On Pro member. For just £1 a month, you can become a member and you get lots of perks. So go and check that out within your YouTube. I will also have a Patreon coming soon for all of those who want to join me on Patreon for some extra perks too. Very exciting stuff, but let's catch up with some Tottenham Hotspur news, shall we? It's been an interesting new year so far in terms of rumours of transfers, especially. Radu Dragusin from Genoa is the main one. I've done a video on him before. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it before. But the news really keeps hotting up with him, I think, now. His agent is doing a lot of talking. Some of it is very positive. He keeps saying, Dragusin's only really interested in playing in England. A lot of the talk from transfer experts like Fabrizio Romano saying Tottenham are very far down the line with this transfer. But it seems to me like every time a positive bit of news comes out, and I'm recording this, by the way, I should say, on Wednesday morning, in case this deal gets over the line before this comes out at 5 o'clock on YouTube. But yeah, every time a positive bit of news comes out, it seems like the agent is trying to dampen it down. Now, let's not forget, Mr. 10%, the agent. All he's really interested in, despite claiming that he wants the best for his player, is also to try and up his own agent fees. So when he says, Dragusin won't leave in this winter window, he doesn't want to leave it, half a job done at Genoa, I think what he's basically saying is, if you're going to get him out of the club this window, you're going to have to pay an extra 5 or 10 million euros, and that will mean an extra few million euros for me. So I think there's a lot of kind of talk, but what I found with these transfers, and I could well be wrong, but what I found, especially over recent years with these Tottenham transfers, is if the real talk of it ramps up more and more and more, as it seems to have done over the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then it tends to be a deal that gets done. I guess what a lot of fans will be saying at the moment is, why can't we just get it done right now? Why can't we spend the extra money? Why won't Levy just put it in and therefore we'll have that player in the door before the Burnley Cup game this coming Friday? But it's a difficult dance. I understand what you're saying if you feel that strongly like that, but also Daniel Levy cannot be seen to be just paying 10 million euros over the odds for a player, because if he does, every time he goes for another player, that's another 10 and another 10, and before you know it, you spent 100 million euros that you didn't want to spend over 10 different transfers. So it's about finding the difficult dance, but what I don't doubt is that Big Ange Postecoglou will be keeping the pressure on Levy, saying we need this position. I mean, Dragusin is a player, sure, but we certainly need a player that I like for this position. So be that Dragusin or Jean-Claire Todibo, who all the rumours are now that Chelsea are going in for him, which is pretty fascinating considering, as I will get to, there's also a huge talk about the Conor Gallagher deal coming to Spurs. But Todibo does look like a good player, and if Chelsea are going to get him, maybe that is another reason why this Conor Gallagher rumour will not go away. Because there is a difference between selling a foreign player, as Chelsea might want to do, but they can't because they've bought all these young players on like 8-9 year deals, and therefore they're not going to get any transfer bids from clubs willing to pay out the rest of their contracts. Then there is to selling a homegrown player. If you sell a homegrown player, you are able to get that money straight in the door, as opposed to a player who you've got on a long contract. The money kind of gets spread out. I believe that's right. Let me know in the comments if I got that right. Somebody told me that the other day, and I actually, that was the first I'd heard of it. But that is why the rumour is so strong that Conor Gallagher is up for sale from Chelsea, and Spurs are sniffing around him for between 40 and 50 million pounds. For me, I think he would be a very, very good signing. He's more of an Ange Postecoglou player in terms of his elite pressing and his talent at arriving late in the box, and he's got a good kind of mid-long range shot on him as well. Then say Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who obviously is doing okay at Spurs in terms of the cameos he's making off the bench, but when he starts, I really feel strongly that we miss out a little kind of 5% at least on some of the the first team members that we like to play in those positions, by which I mean Bissouma, Bentancur, and of course James Maddison. Oh, James Maddison, how I miss you. Anyway, so that kind of Gallagher, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, will they, won't they, come to Spurs and leave Spurs? Latest rumour on Højbjerg is that Juventus are sniffing around again. There have been talks of Juventus wanting him for the last few months. I think if we were to get 20 to 25 million pounds for Højbjerg, maybe even on a loan with an obligation So 6-month loan, and then they're obliged to buy him. I think if Gallagher is lined up, and they can be sure that if they sell Højbjerg, they can get Gallagher, then that is a deal that I could see happening. If Gallagher doesn't come through the door, or another option comes through the door in midfield, I cannot see why we would sell Pierre-Emile Højbjerg without getting someone in. That would be a risk akin to the risk we made when we sold Davinson Sanchez after the window shut to Turkey back in August, and then didn't get another centre-half in, and that is what has led to us having to play 2 full-backs at centre-half over the last few weeks. They've done okay, but it is not ideal. Next bit of news, no doubt you will have heard yesterday, is that Manchester United's loan of Sergio Reguilon has been cut short. Apparently United always had an option in there to cut it short in January, so really he was just kind of used as absolute backup for the injuries they had for Malacia and Luke Shaw, and now that those players are back or are coming back, he's been cut short. I read a rumour this morning that Dortmund are looking to get Reguilon now on a 6-month loan going into this summer. The issue that I have with that is that I feel like Daniel Levy's made a bit of a rod for his own back with Reguilon, actually, because he let Reguilon go to Man United solely on a loan deal, no loan fee whatsoever, just United picking up his wages. So when Dortmund are negotiating for Reguilon to go on a loan till this summer, why would they offer anything more? I can't see why they would. They'll just say, well, you accepted it before, why don't you accept it again? And we'll just be getting him off our wage bill. Which, of course, is better than nothing, I guess, but a lot of these loans really do get a kind of £2, £3, £4 million loan fee sometimes, and we can't be in a position where we're not getting those anymore. Hugo Lloris, of course, has left the club. That's a bit of news that's happened since I last spoke to you. He got a great send-off at half-time in the game the other day, and a lovely kind of goodbye video from Hugo. He will go down as a club legend, absolute top goalkeeper. When he started as a goalkeeper at Spurs, he was, in my books, one of only maybe 2 kind of sweeper keepers in the entirety of Europe with Manuel Neuer. And then since he's been at Spurs, he's kind of been an icon for goalkeepers growing up and learning how to play with a high position, starting high, clearing up behind his defenders. What I would say, the irony of that is, as I felt in his last few seasons at Spurs, as his confidence dipped, he kind of stayed far more on his line, actually, and wasn't the sweeper keeper that he was back in the day. But anyway, what a player. Really excellent. The next rumour is that Eric Dyer apparently interesting David Moyes at West Ham. I could really see him as a West Ham centre-back, actually. He wouldn't be asked to do too much on the ball, just to be a kind of stopper, what was known in the old days as a stopper, just defend and just tackle. And Moyes, such a good defensive manager, would probably teach Eric Dyer a few things about how to, position himself really well. So if they were going to offer us a little bit of money to take him this January, considering his contract runs out in July, maybe that's something. Next bit of news, Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville did their teams of the season so far, for Sky Sports on Monday night. Heung-min Son, Destiny Udogie and Guillermo Vicario made both of their teams of the year so far, which is very impressive. The only difference in Gary Neville's team was that he didn't pick Vicario, actually. Sorry, that's not true. Udogie and Vicario were in Carragher's team, and Son was in all of the teams, and then Gary Neville picked Alisson in goal instead of Vicario. I think that's kind of fair enough, but Vicario showing how brilliant he is, and Udogie in all of their teams of the year, same with Son. Not a surprise with Sonny, what a player. But for Udogie to be the top left back in the league, according to those pundits, in his first season in the Premier League, unbelievable. Obviously, Pat Matar has now gone off to the African Cup of Nations, but before he did, he signed a new deal to 2030. Incredibly exciting young player, really proving himself this season, and I think, there is no end to his talents. He can go wherever he wants. He seems like he has the right personality for it as well. So incredibly exciting for Spurs to sign him up. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. If Sarr was playing for Brighton, there'd be teams like Chelsea bidding £100 million for him right now. That's how exciting a young talent he is. If they pay 100 for Caicedo, they'd pay that for Sarr's talent as well. So we've got him on a long-term deal with big sell-on value if ever there comes a point where he wanted to leave. But at the moment, that wouldn't be for the next 3 or 4 years, I don't think. Going into the Man United game, I'll talk about Burnley in a minute, but the Man United game, which is on the 14th, our next Premier League game, big talk that their keeper, Onana, will play in that game, despite the fact he has been called up by Cameroon for the African Cup of Nations, and their first game is just 24 hours later. Really fascinating one, that. They don't have any kind of what I'd call name second goalkeepers, Man United, so they're clearly very keen for Onana to play in that game, but would his mind be elsewhere? Obviously, he'd have to get straight on a plane and then go and play for Cameroon 24 hours later. So, interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think about the possibility of Onana playing that game. Will it be good for us or bad for us? And then finally, just in terms of news, I just wanted to kind of put it out there for you. Friday night, Burnley, FA Cup game, huge game. We all want to go far in the Cup this year. We want to win it. Let's face it, we could win it. But will we play our first team on Friday night, or will we play some youngsters and kind of squad players? We haven't got a game for another, week or two. So why don't we just play the first team? That's my opinion. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you want him to play the strongest team possible in the FA Cup? A lot of you have been calling for players like Jamie Donnelly and Alfie Dorrington to get game time. Do you want them to get game time, their first kind of starts in a game like this? Or is that risking going out of the Cup too much? We've all seen those games over the last few years where we've lost to a team we should beat in the Cup. Middlesbrough, Norwich at home, I remember. I don't want that to happen again. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening to and watching this episode of the Spurred On podcast. Once again, as I said, if you're watching on YouTube, there's opportunities for you to join as a Spurred On Pro, which gives you membership perks. It's only 99p a month. If you fancy that and you want some of those perks, including what I will do is some live shows just for members down the line. So do join that membership if you're up for it. And as I said, there will be a Patreon account coming up soon where it'll be £1 a month for some perks on Patreon too, for any of you guys who are not watching on YouTube. And if any of you want to sign up to both, that's also cool too. But thanks again for watching and listening. I really appreciate all of your support. And most importantly, with a big game coming up on Friday, come on you Spurs.